r/ProRevenge. Mock the disabled, justice is served many years later. Story 1. So a couple of years ago, I worked in the lovely career of retail. It's sadly normal for there to be a constant flow of shop lowlifes that make you despise their existence. And there are those that are so horrific that what they do is burned into your mind forever. Fortunately, one of these unforgettable moments allowed me to extract my revenge. I had only worked in retail for 1 year in this newly built store and was starting to settle in, getting to know the great customers and understanding that some people shouldn't be allowed outside, which, being a shy person who hates conflict, wasn't the best, but at least one of my customers was an absolutely adorable elderly lady who always made time to talk and was an absolute joy to be with. Now, it had been some weeks since I had last seen her, but one morning I saw her car parked in the disabled parking bay as she already had a blue badge. Only this time, she hobbled out of the car on crutches with a cast on her leg. I hadn't had a chance to talk to her yet when a work truck, which did not have a blue disabled badge, pulled into the disabled space next to her and out jumped an early 40s builder with their teenage kid. Well, this little old lady was having none of this and must have been absolutely fearless. She stood up to this ignorant builder and politely informed them that they shouldn't be parking there as it's for the disabled and he doesn't have a badge. What happened next, I can't forget, was that this builder decided the best course of action was to humiliate and insult this poor elderly lady in crutches, accuse her of faking her disability, claimed the cast on her leg was a fake, and that she probably milks the benefit system for as much money as possible, then walked off, putting on an overly dramatic fake limp, laughing away with her teenage kid, while the old lady stood there in shock. Sadly, being someone who lacks courage, I did absolutely nothing about it, and that would stick with me forever. I tried, feebly, to ask a manager later to do something about it, but they didn't care or want to get involved. For years, I worked in this store, always seeing this vile builder come in and out. Fortunately, I never interacted with this vile builder, but I saw them often, and every time I did, I would always remember what they had done vividly. I would still see them park in the disabled bays, and I even got to the point where I would recognize them by the large blue Mercedes they drove. 7 years later, I was still working in this store, and this lowlife was still parking in the disabled spot and looking like an absolute dirtbag. Yet this year, I was blessed with good fortune, and our store was outfitted with some absolutely joyful equipment. Due to the high number of complaints, our store had set up a company to deal with the parking violations. But instead of having external parties come in and ticket cars, the staff of the store were given the ticketing machine, and it was our duty to go to the parking lot and record any cars that violated the parking rules. This was all done digitally, and there would be no paper tickets on the cars, and this was brilliant. As soon as I found out, I knew what I was going to do. It didn't take long for me to learn how to use the machine, and it certainly didn't take long for the opportunity to get revenge, and so it began. There were 3 rules for parking, and if you broke these 3 rules, there was a lovely £80 fine each time it happened. The first rule is that there is no parking in the disabled slot without a badge, and I know well that the vile builder is certainly violating this rule, and it wasn't long until I saw him next. As soon as he entered the store, I quickly scurried out with the ticketing machine, and lo and behold, there was the oversized blue Mercedes in the closest disabled bay with no badge. I smashed their car details in with some well-shot photos and sent the report off so that they would receive a lovely letter of their fine that they would have to pay. That's not enough, though. But fortunately, it takes weeks for them to finally receive the ticket, which grants me the opportunity to constantly ticket their parking violations. Because, as you would expect, the scum would always park in the disabled spot, and as I worked at the front of the store, I would always know when they had parked. After ticketing their car dozens of times, the scum unfortunately learned their lesson as their oversized blue Mercedes no longer appeared in disabled parking bays. But as you expect, the lowlife would still be a lowlife, and they would find their new parking space inside child parking. Rule 2. Don't park inside child parking without a child. Has this lowlife gotten enough? I thought, of course, they hadn't learned their lesson and continued to be a complete and park in the child parking, which we don't have many spaces for. At this point, I knew all their car details by heart and would gleefully fill out the ticket machine as I skipped over to their car violating child parking and took the photos needed for them. including shots of their car seats that had no child seats in them. And as it became routine, this once again carried on with a few more tickets being created, and eventually they started receiving the fines. Fortunately, me being me, I am completely invisible to others and often looked over, and I have yet to be seen or caught. But as all good things must eventually come to an end, when the lowlife came into the shop, their blue turd automobile was no longer there and child parking or disabled. Has the lowlife finally learned their lesson? Would you be surprised if they had not? It didn't take me long to find them. Rule number 3, you must park inside a marked bay. And what a surprise, the lowlife still manages to screw this up. They would park over the line, taking 2 spaces up. Well, guess what? That's a job for me and my ticket machine, trying to park inside taxi parking but can't fit the big stupid car in it. Boom, that ain't inside a marked bay, and ka-ching, another ticket and another fine for them. Have one single wheel slightly over the white line of a bay? Well, guess who technically broke the rule? That's right, Dirtbag did. And there went a few more weeks of fun until eventually Dirtbag ran out of ways that they could possibly break the rules, and our company hired externally to start ticketing cars, so my beloved weapon of justice goes to rest. Now I know what people are probably going to say, that all these fines are not enforceable because of blah 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 blah, but I honestly don't care for a few reasons. Firstly, I'm being paid to do this, so either way, my time or money isn't wasted. Secondly, it did have an effect as they changed their parking habits. And thirdly, even if they don't end up paying, they're still going to spend a ton of time and effort trying to overturn them over and over again, having to constantly be by mail. Overall, if all the fines were counted separately and added up, they would have received thousands of pounds worth of fines, building up over time for being a dirtbag. Cherry on top, about 3 years later, I walk by this piece of dirt in the parking lot and watch as they scream at some innocent dude in a high-vis jacket, accusing them of being the ones giving them all parking fines, which put me at peace knowing this must have seriously got to them and caused them to still be raving mad after 3 years. In the business of retail, you meet all kinds of people, some as sweet as candy, some not so much. There are others who left you scratching your head, wondering if they were from another planet. The story of the store clerk dude as he navigates the wild world of retail is all about empathy, consequences, and of course, doing the right thing. One day, he witnessed an elderly lady with a blue badge park her car in the disabled parking bay, totally legit. She's got crutches and all, but then came Mr. Builder in his truck, no blue badge in sight, and he parked right next to her. The elderly lady, brave as can be, decided to set things straight. Mr. Builder chose a different approach. Rather than admitting that he'd made a mistake, he made the decision to humiliate the elderly lady. Accusations fly. She lying about the cast in her leg? He claimed she was a scam. To top it all off, he implied that she was taking advantage of the welfare system. All the while, he's walking about with a lousy limp and laughing in front of his teenage children. This entire scenario raises some serious concerns. Mr. Builder, what kind of lesson are you giving your child? Is this the legacy you wish to leave? Our actions, especially those done while we are with our children, influence their values. Disrespecting others, especially those who may be in need of assistance, does not set a good example. Why couldn't Mr. Builder see that he'd made a huge mistake? He appears to have a blind spot for empathy. Some people tend to believe that the rules do not apply to them. Perhaps it's a combination of ignorance and a lack of awareness of the difficulties that people with disabilities encounter. Now, the store clerk finds himself in a difficult situation. When confronted with the builder's terrible behavior, he decided not to address him directly. While some may question this decision, it's important to realize that not everyone enjoys conflict. In such cases, it is essential to consider personal safety as well as the possibility of conflict escalation. Instead, the dude found an alternative solution to the problem, one that proved effective in the long run. Now, this story serves as a reminder that empathy, consequences, and doing the right thing are all important. We must instill in our children the values of respect, kindness, and understanding. And when we witness someone doing something wrong, let's find ways to make it right, whether by speaking up or coming up with a creative solution. Mr. Builder's actions had an impact and the ramifications lingered. Armed with an instrument for justice, our store clerk dude chose to utilize an alternative approach to punish Mr. Builder's behavior. Some might argue that fines are ineffective, but guess what? They worked here. Mr. Builder adjusted his parking habits, demonstrating that creativity does go a long way. The journey of the retail store dude tells us that standing up for what is right, especially in difficult times, can really make a difference. Empathy, consequences, and doing the right thing can all have a positive effect on our world, so here's to brightening the world one parking spot at a time.
What was the worst time you walked in?
Rufus Rugs, open up! Sorry for barging in like that, but I just had to share the sponsor of today's video. Me and the boys from Rufus Rugs. Now you might be saying to yourself,
excuse me, what the actual are you doing in my house?
But I can assure you're gonna like this. We've been hard at work creating the best quality and premium hand-tufted rugs money can buy. Now imagine this. You, chilling on your bed, watching a Rufus Stories video, and staring at a rug that's not just a rug. Nope, it's a masterpiece. It's the kind of rug that makes your friends wish they were you. But they're not. And the best part is that these aren't your average cheap quality rugs. Nope, each one is handcrafted by me and the boys. No shortcuts, no robot assembly lines, and no dropshipping BS. Just pure rug grind. Whether you love anime, sports, cars, or anything else you can think of, we can turn it into a rug. So click the first link in the description and have your custom idea come to life.
Story 2. About 6 or 7 months ago, my neighbor got a drone. I don't mind people having hobbies, but for some reason he insisted on flying it like the biggest a-hole possible. He would hover in front of other houses and windows, try to race cars going down the road, and worst of all, he had a habit of flying his drone in my fenced backyard, buzzing over my dog, diving low just over my dog's head before circling around to do it again. My dog isn't small, he's about 70 pounds and a Malamute, but the drone terrified him and I was worried what would happen if it hit him. I asked my neighbor several times to please not fly in my yard and explained that it was scaring my dog. He basically told me to get lost and laughed in my face. When it still continued, I called the police. Unfortunately, there wasn't much they could do other than ask him to please not fly over my property. Finally, in late December it happened. My dog got tired of his antics and managed to catch the drone right as it was diving towards him. He shredded the drone. The thing was just a jumbled mess of wires and plastic. My neighbor was angry. He stormed over to my house, swearing and threatening me, which I ignored. A week later, I got a summons to small claims court. He wanted $900 for the cost of his drone and an additional $300 for supposedly denying him access to my property. The drone sat in my yard for a couple of hours before it was retrieved. Screw that. He could have harmed my dog. I don't have kids or a girlfriend. I just have my dog, who has been my best friend for the past 7 years. That dog has moved with me 3 times. It was there when I graduated college and saw me buy my first house and my first new car. I love my dog. I went to legal advice and got some great help from them. It turns out that him suing me was the best thing to ever happen. When we got to small claims court, the judge basically laughed away his claims that I had intentionally trained my dog to attack his drone. But little did he know I was prepared. I had dozens of photos of my yard showing it was impossible for him to accidentally fly that low to my dog, videos of him my dog in the past, and I had saved all my medical bills from taking my dog to the vet. $700 for an x-ray? Check. Another $250 to sedate him during? Why not? I don't want him to be uncomfortable. A full dental exam with tooth cleaning and repair? $400. Then there was a cost of anti-anxiety medications, a secondary checkup, wet food for a week in case his teeth were hurt, and extra just for good measure. In the end, he ended up owing me almost $2,000, and now it is being investigated by the FAA for not having a registered drone and violating several FAA regulations concerning drone flight, too near an airport, too close to other people, out of sight of the operator, and way above the maximum altitude. In a society where hobbies and interests can be as diverse as the people who seek them, we frequently find ourselves living in close proximity to people who have unusual interests. Take, for example, the recent interest in drones. While this innovation has created great opportunities, it has also created neighborly disputes at times. In this scenario, a neighbor buys a drone and, for reasons only known to them, chooses to fly it in a disrespectful manner. He flies over houses, plays chicken with passing cars, and even breaches boundaries by accessing private areas, such as a neighbor's property. Such behavior is not only bothersome, but it can also have adverse effects. In this story, he constantly flew his drone near a neighbor's pet dog. The outcome was less than ideal, with the pet understandably frightened and the owner anxious about potential harm. Requests for this behavior to stop are met with dismissive responses, and even law enforcement could do nothing more than request a change in behavior. Eventually, fate intervened and the pet intercepted the drone, reducing it to a tangled mess. However, this act provoked reactions, resulting in legal challenges over damages. While it is critical to address bad behavior, it also provides significant insight into the consequences of neighborly disagreements. The consequences of one's actions can be unpredictable. Engaging in behavior that infringes upon a neighbor's privacy or disrupts their peace can result in unintended conflicts. It's crucial to consider the impact of one's actions on those around them and strive for amicable solutions when issues arise. Second, the story also touches on the tendency of certain people to tell lies in order to outdo or outmaneuver others. In this case, the neighbor claimed that the drone was flown too low by accident to scare off the dog, but this was later proven false. Such attempts to distort the truth can aggravate disagreements and harm relationships. Furthermore, the incident demonstrates the need to be prepared when faced with legal issues. The resident who cared about their pet's safety and well-being meticulously documented previous misconduct, giving a solid case in their favor. While legal action should be used as a last resort, being well prepared can make a significant difference when pursuing a resolution. On a larger scale, this story inspires consideration about responsible drone ownership. Drones are becoming more common, and their use should be governed by proper legislation. Consideration of licensing rules for drone operators could aid in ensuring safe and respectful usage, protecting the quiet and privacy of residents. This story of the neighbor's reckless drone flying offers valuable lessons about the consequences of one's actions, the pitfalls of falsehoods, and the importance of preparedness when seeking legal resolutions. Story 3. This was 4 years ago, so the sting is gone and my revenge has been had. We dated for 4 years and had what I thought was a great relationship. We were both well-established professionals who both owned homes in the same neighborhood and both had daughters in the home. We had actually planned to get married, build a house, and raise the 2 daughters together. We planned the house build because she had recently been diagnosed with a neurological disease that would eventually put her in a wheelchair and needed something ADA-friendly. During the planning stages, I began doing landscape and construction projects on her home to increase the resale value. All in all, I invested roughly $30,000 into the home, running everything through my side construction business for tax, permitting, and resale purposes. We had a contract that quote-unquote payment would be made upon the sale of the home. I produced invoices for each and every project but never pushed for payment because of the prior agreement. Fast forward 6 months and we're looking at property to develop and finalize drawings on the home when I began feeling ill. I couldn't eat, I was constantly vomiting. I began noticing that my abdomen looked swollen, which was odd because we were both very clean eaters and were in the gym every day. So I went to the doctor and began having tests done. During this time, she began having small cognitive issues and the stress of her current position was exasperating her condition. So she took a $20,000 per annum cut in pay, along with a lesser position inside the company. After a month or so of different tests and a biopsy, it came back that I had a golf ball-sized tumor in my stomach and would need to begin chemotherapy. So I began chemo and radiation treatments, which made me, expectedly, extremely ill. She was spending time helping around my place on the weekends and staying over more, to the point that they were both at my home more than theirs. At this point, I suggested that we go ahead and put one of our houses on the market and move in together until the new house is built. I have great supplemental insurance as well as a long-term illness plan, so using that, coupled with the sale of one of our houses, would push us through comfortably and help ease the financial stress on her. Shortly after this discussion, she became extremely distant. Her daughter wasn't coming down and hanging out with mine anymore. She had excuses for not getting together. She quit driving me to treatments and stopped staying over. She then dropped a bomb, a sentence that will forever be burned into my psyche. I love you, but I can't see myself taking care of someone this sick in the long term, and I don't think we should see each other any longer. In a text message. And it broke me, I won't lie. This was the first woman I had ever opened up to and planned a life with since my wife passed away when my children were 1 and 3. However, I tried to be mature about it. I forced myself to understand her position and to accept what I could not change. I calmly the next day gathered all of her things and packed them neatly, loaded them in my truck, and took them to her house to leave on the back porch while she was at work in order to avoid any awkward exchanges. Walking around the back and under the porch cover, I sat down a box and saw her in her back living room on the couch getting frisky with a man that she had introduced me to as a lifelong friend. I had dinner and drinks with this man and his girlfriend. We had gone on vacation with them as well. I never spoke of the incident with her and simply sent her a text later explaining that I would leave her things on my side porch to pick up at her convenience. I discovered 8 or 9 months later from his now ex-girlfriend that they had broken up due to him confessing that he had been sleeping with Maya, so dating back to about the time we were finishing drawings on the new home. Now, I'm angry. Revenge time. At this point, I had finished chemo and radiation for the time being and was feeling healthier. I was going through some much-neglected paperwork when I ran across the file that contained $32,680 in unpaid, long-overdue invoices, which were promptly sent to my attorney to begin lie-in proceedings on the home. It turns out that I couldn't have done this a moment too soon because she was set to put her house on the market. Coupled with interest over the course of what was then 19 months overdue, the invoices were pretty hefty. That, along with the agreement to settle them when the house was sold and attorney fees, left her with roughly $10,000 after the sale of the home and settling her current mortgage. She promptly had to back out of the purchase of another home and moved in with her oldest daughter, sister-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. She also had to leave her job and begin receiving disability. I ran into her a little over a year ago, and she looked as if she had aged 20 years and was in a wheelchair. We chatted cordially but briefly, and I excused myself and went on with my day. A few days later, her younger daughter called me and spoke of my running into her mom, asking if we could hang out sometime. I gave a vague answer, thanked her for calling, and again went on with my day. The ex then called me a week or so later and began apologizing for leaving me as she did. Again, cordial but short, I thanked her for calling and hung up. She began texting, and this went on for several weeks until one day she asked if I could ever see us rekindling what we had, to which I replied, I can't see myself taking care of someone so sick in the long term. Remember the box on your back porch? Did you think that lifelong friend brought that over to you from my house? Good luck to you. Goodbye. I sometimes feel guilt over this, but not much and not often. This story depicts trust destroyed, affection abandoned, and revenge served cold in the arena of love and grief. When illness struck, this guy's 4-year romance, which was filled with hopes of making a life together, came crashing down. When he was diagnosed with a terrifying illness, his now ex was dealing with her own career difficulties. The link between them weakened as the sickness advanced. What began as a common struggle soon became a state of disarray. The partner, who had formerly been a pillar of support, grew emotionally and physically aloof. The text message that said, I love you, but I can't see myself taking care of someone this sick in the long run, created scars that would never entirely heal. A shocking revelation emerged in the middle of the sadness. The betrayal went much farther than anyone could have predicted. Behind the appearance of a lifelong friendship was a secret affair that evolved right in front of this dude's eyes. The agony of lying fueled the flames of anger and misery. In an unexpected turn of events, he discovered a means to recover his sense of justice. Unpaid invoices totaling more than $32,000 were discovered, prompting legal action. The ramifications were extensive, affecting not only finances but employment as well. The consequences of this twisted web of love, treachery, and vengeance were life-changing. But was the revenge justifiable? Well, some may argue that it served as a means of retribution. Others might question whether it was the path to true closure. This man's experience reminds us that in the face of suffering, relationships may shatter, and the decisions we make in times of pain can have far-reaching implications. It shows the fragility of trust and the depths of human emotion. So if you enjoyed these stories, you won't want to miss r/ProRevenge Bully Me for My Disability. Have fun getting suspended. Story number 2 will satisfy your revenge-crazed persona. Also, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel to stay in the loop about our upcoming videos. And we'll see you at the next one. Thanks for watching.